So with that said, I'm going to introduce the panelists that are here. We're only missing the one that said she may be a little bit late. So we'll start with Jackie Montoya. And if we can see Jackie, and Jackie is in the room there with Paula, and I think she named it.
It's Jackie at FIC Office.
Jackie at FIC Office. Virginia, why don't we introduce you? Virginia, Vicki comes across as Virginia. Vicki, can we see you? We don't appear to have, there you are. Hi, Vicki. Welcome.
Hi.
So
Thank
Vicki
you.
is Director of Behavioral Health with Care First, and has experience working with the system. And we just are so grateful that you're here, Vicki.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Okay. Next, we'll go to Jackie. Jackie, if you want to start talking, that will put you in the speaker picture. And we're waiting for Jackie to say good morning. Jackie is a family member.
Good morning.
There you are. Jackie, you want to raise your hand so everybody knows which of the three people you are? There you are. Wonderful, Jackie. We so appreciate you taking the time to be here and do this. And then let's go to Esther. Esther is a family member, Esther Cadman. So Esther, if you start talking, we should be able to see you in the big picture.
Yeah, hi. Good morning or good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Okay.
I'm a parent in the FIC program. Or
all right. And for those who may not know, FIC means Family Involvement Center. And what part of the country are you located in?
I'm living in Flagstaff, Arizona.
All right. Thank you. I should have asked other people where they were, but I can say that. Let's see, Jackie was in Prescott Valley, I'm going to guess. And I'm going to guess that Vicki's in the Phoenix area. All right. So,
Laurie, I just wanted to correct you there. The FIC office that we're talking about is the office in Flagstaff. And so Jackie is also in Flagstaff.
Oh, thank you. And just when you came on, I was like, oh, wait a minute. That's Flagstaff. All right. Good deal. Thanks, Paula. So let's go to Amelia. Amelia Cearlock is Assistant of Care Manager. She's supervisor with DCS. Amelia, if you want to say good morning or good afternoon to everybody, then you will show up in the speaker view on everybody's screen.
Absolutely. Hello, everyone.
There you are. And we're really glad to have Amelia here because some people do have experience with DCS. And if that comes up, we have Amelia to help field that. Now I'd like to go to Nicole Davis. And Nicole, if you say good afternoon, then we'll have you spotlighted.
Hi, good afternoon. How are you guys?
We're good, and we're so glad to have you here. What magnificent art you have behind you. I love that.
Thank you.
And what part of the state are you in?
I'm in Flagstaff, Arizona as well. So
right. Yeah, I think a lot of us would rather be there today than where we actually are with the coming in. Thank you, Nicole. Next, let's go to Kent Mattern, Clinical Director of FIC. Kent.
Hello. Yeah, my name's Kent Mattern, and I'm Clinical Director at Family Involvement Center since last August. Before that was at West Yavapai Guidance Clinic as the Children's Director for 17 years, and then in other positions. So sat in on hundreds and hundreds of CFTs. So I'm a true believer and have some experience with it.
All right. And are you, what part of the state are you?
I'm in Prescott, Arizona.
Okay. Thanks, Ken, again for joining us.
Yes.
Zara McGregor, if you'd say good afternoon, then you'll be in the speaker view.
good afternoon, everyone. I'm Zara. I'm also in Flagstaff, and I'm a family member.
Thanks so much for being here with us. And then we have Kim Severe, Clinical Care Coordinator with Health Choice AC. Kim, if you want to say good afternoon, we'll have you on the speaker view.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Kim Severe. I am the DCS Transition Coordinator since that has transitioned out of health choice and clinical liaison. And I have worked with the CFT workforce development team to create our newest version of the CFT that we have going, the 2-day version. And then I've also trained for Northern Arizona in the CFT 2-day training for several years since being here at Health Choice. So I'm glad to be here today. Thank you.
All right, and thank you so much for being here.
So I'm Layla Bishop. I'm the Workforce Development Administrator for United Healthcare. I'm also heading up I actually took over for Amanda Stevens for the CFT curriculum. Please mind my voice. I've been sick over the weekend, so I'm grateful I can even speak today. Prior to coming onto the health plan, I worked for the provider world. So I facilitated many CFTs as well as observed and managed lots of high needs case managers. I am a true believer in the process and making sure we have oversight in the delivery of CFTs. So I'm really, really happy to be here.
And I am so happy you're here, and I really appreciated talking with you the other day, and we'll see what comes up in the conversation. And if some of what we talked about doesn't, I will bring it up, because I think there's some pieces that people aren't familiar with the new training and regarding the follow-up specifically. So we'll see where we go.
Laurie?
Yes.
This is Paula. We also have Candy Beebe on, the other parent on the panel.
Oh, excellent. So Candy, welcome. We're glad that you were able to make it. With our technology, the panelists aren't able to be spotlighted for everyone. But if everyone puts their screen on the speaker view, then you will see who is speaking in the bigger picture. So I'm going to ask you, Candy, to say good afternoon so that your voice will activate you to be in the speaker view.
Hi, good afternoon.
There you are. Thank you so much for joining us. And are you also up in the Flagstaff area?
I'm actually in Williams, which is just outside of Flagstaff.
Okay, yeah, all right, wonderful. So appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
So I think we're ready to go. We're ready to get started. Kathy, do you want to add anything before we go?
No, you've done a marvelous job.
Okay. Who would like to start with a comment about what's working or what isn't working? And only the panelists are allowed to speak. So maybe I'll just go ahead and put Kent on the spot, because Kent, you volunteered that you have sat in on hundreds and hundreds of these. So I'm sure you have seen where it has and where it hasn't worked, and now where you are today over time, you're still involved with that. So how would you like to? What would you like
Well,
to
I could say, from the beginning, when Arizona first took on the CFT process, close to 20 years ago, that's when I was very involved. And, for me, the strength of the CFT in the philosophy of, more putting people together and having a team process so that we're all sharing the burden and the joys and the successes of the CFT. But it really is about, it takes a village to raise a child and to support a family, and the exploration in those early days and the emphasis on really doing a lot of engagement with all the team members and particularly the family to make it a comfortable place. And I think professionals and all the folks that worked for me, we had to remind ourselves and kind of reinvent that year after year, because you can kind of forget how vulnerable it could feel to take your own family and your own set of circumstances and walk into an agency and share it and lay yourself out there. It's a brave journey, I think, for parents and for children. I found it particularly for parents, because the children are kids and they're just kind of present and authentic wherever they go, and they play and they come in. But their involvement was also very, I think, instrumental to it being successful. We would have staff and families that said, "Oh no, let's not bring the kids in," kind of in a good motivation to try to protect them. But almost always when we had the kids in there for at least part of CFT process, it truly paid off. They could be validated on their strengths and their likes and their interests. And that layer of validation with the strengths and bringing strengths and talking about strengths every single meeting at the beginning as one of the steps to making parents and families comfortable, making everyone comfortable. But I think particularly that engagement piece was so important. And I've seen periods of time when that has fallen off. I'm less in touch with how the CFTs are going now because I moved away from the kid system into the adult system the last couple of years at West Yavapai. And then at the center, I have staff that attend the CFTs, but I'm not personally attending them. So I don't know if that's the case, but my worries about how with less emphasis, less training on the CFTs system-wide, the REBAs used to do, 3-day trainings, involve parents and everything is, I think one of the big strengths and what's working on on CFTs that are getting there and working is that piece of engagement, making it comfortable, embracing the strengths and culture of the family. That is all the layer of nurturance and validation that I think makes it possible to face tough problems. And so I worry that our less nurturing of that amongst staff and amongst agencies really could have its cost. And it's partly, harder to do when you have 7 different health homes and the health home changes have taken place. So an intentional effort to re-embrace that part of the CFT process. So I'm going to finish with that. There's lots I could say, but
Thanks, Kent.
Okay.
Appreciate that.
So from what I have heard from the community, and I'd really like to hear from family members at this point, is to share some of your experiences, and is this what you have experienced? And so why don't some of the family members share and some of the other quote professionals, respond to some of their concerns and their experiences.
My name is Jackie, and I've written a short paragraph. I have found that my voice is not being heard. I ask for a subject to be addressed, and it is either ignored or I am told that I need to change my expectations. I am addressing huge behaviors, crisis behaviors, the change of counselors. Martha left, Amelia left, 2 more that I don't even remember. I have talked to counselors about what behaviors need to be addressed, serious behaviors, abusive behaviors towards myself and other siblings. My granddaughter took an overdose, attempted suicide on Monday, May 24th. I have only had a meeting about meds for approximately 20 minutes from a doctor that I have never met and referred to me and my granddaughter as another family. I have not met with another counselor to come up with a plan for future treatment. I have another grandson who is extremely abusive, manipulative. He has bully behavior, and they choose to put me on the back burner and don't address the behaviors that I need to be addressed.
So you've kind of had a disappointing experience in the CFT process. What about some of the other family members?
My 17-year-old granddaughter refuses to have treatment because she says that it's not helping her. She says that all she needs is me, and she's fine with just talking to me. The 15-year-old boy is the one who is choosing to participate in what he wants to participate in. What he chooses not to participate in, they don't make him, they don't hold him accountable for it. I've been in this counseling for a little over a year and a half, and the behaviors have gotten worse. He's gone to juvenile, now we're in the process of juvenile probation, and they are not addressing the behaviors that need to be addressed. The 14-year-old is the one that attempted suicide. And like I say, they're not addressing what needs to be addressed to help her in the process. And when I speak up or I send messages or here, deal with this, please. Deal with her sadness, please. She was very sad last night. She was crying. She was this, she was that. I never get feedback on what happens or what I need to do, what they've done, what I need to do, that everybody is on the same page.
So
and I feel like I'm not being heard.
Yeah, we're hearing you. We're hearing you with that. And I think that with the opportunity for people who are on the provision, service providing, and from different levels of that are here, it's good for them to hear that from you, because they may not be hearing that. So this is part of why we are doing this. And I wonder if any of the other panel family members would like to share some of their experience.
Sure, I can. I'm Zara. The only issues here in Flagstaff that I've had or experienced and run into is with initiating services for my child and with the school district. He's no longer in the school district, but those were the only two issues I've had here in Flagstaff. Prior child family teams I've had were difficult, and I like the point that you and Kent made before was like it's the family engagement that really is key. I used to not really be involved because I didn't feel heard. I just lost my thought, sorry. But it was difficult to feel like I was being taken into consideration. My concerns were heard. But here, things that do work is the amazing communication. I am able to have open lines of communication to all of his service providers. And I think also another thing is I think more providers should be available. Yeah, that's what I got.
All right, thank you.
I can ask a follow-up question for her. When you say available, can you follow up on that in specific? How would you want them more available? Like phone calls or in-person appointments, or what are you referencing there?
I think what I mean by that, I apologize, is having that resource being told to me, because a lot of times we're expected to do things, right? And which is fine, that's normal. But we're not really told how we can do it or who to go to.
Thank you, and that's a great question, Ken. So I've got from one of the observers in the chat box saying, my experience with CFTs is there's no nurturing, only blame and shame to families, and no options for care, no understanding. So there's someone expressing how the experience is for them. Any other of the parents on the panel here would like to share a little bit about your experience.
I'll go. So I wrote down a couple of things. I mean, overall, for my experience, I can say I benefited a lot in multiple ways, but I mean, I feel like it was just like to have the push behind you to like know that your child's life is on the line, basically. Your everything, you know. Let me see. But like to go through this whole thing, I've definitely just seen how the whole system works, and I feel fair in general. Like to say it's not nurturing, I mean, like if you get a great person, like say I had April, and through the whole thing, she's just like, she helped me. She never left my side. She never not once made sure that she wasn't there, or that she didn't call when she was supposed to, or, you know, like because of her, I was able to like have knowledge on what was coming next, or what I needed to be prepared for, or what I needed to even just kind of like know about as a parent, and just prepare myself as for a parent, and like just to be able to be there for my son. And without her, I think it would have been a definitely different experience, just because you guys say, well, not like you guys, but like the system says that they got you, and that you can trust them, and that you can place your faith in them to make sure that you guys are getting reunified. But then you guys place everything off of one thing, and that's like, say if you have a substance abuse problem, or whoop-de-whoop, if you're not passing every single thing, then that right there determines if you have your rights or not. And everything that you could be doing right gets disqualified off of this one determination. And to think that, like, if you go to any AA group or whatever, having a addiction, it's a lifelong thing. It's a lifelong thing that you fight. And to sit here and place like someone in a time frame and tell them that they have to fix something that most everybody in life fights for their lifetime is like, it's unrealistic expectations. It's almost like a setup, I feel like. And then, I mean, like I've definitely been able to break through, I think, in different ways than most people. And my case has definitely been different. But you guys say that place faith in you guys and trust you guys, and then you guys pawn us off to the next person because you guys have too many cases on your hand. And then we have to open up to a whole nother person. We have to explain our story to a whole nother person again. And then instead of knowing what we've gone through from the beginning, this person's just picking us up halfway through, not knowing the battle we went through. And then you're getting compared to the next person when each person is different. Like I definitely know that there are parents that are like not able to do it for their kids. And yes, I do feel like the system does serve those kids justice, but then you have the parents that do for their kids and that are there for their kids and will bend over backwards and break and then put themselves back together to make sure that their kid is okay. But because you've seen so many messed up parents, you automatically place people in a category that they don't belong in. And then I mean, at the end of the day, my case has been almost like a year and a half, and it has definitely been a rocky road, but I, as a person, have grown from this. I have learned a lot. I've been able to persevere through a lot, and I'm grateful for it. But like, bond is everything, and I just don't feel like the system bonds. They just, it's almost like running cattle through a slaughterhouse. And you're just trying to get through them and weave them out, and you don't even take your time to get to know the cow. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, Zara, I think you bring up a few good points about where you may feel like you're being judged and not seen for you as who you are, but being viewed by whatever that caseworker's experience is with other people, lumping everybody into the same box. That doesn't work. And I think we find in every profession, there's people who are good at it people who are better and not as good at it. But another point I think you bring up is having the support of Family Involvement Center, having the support of FIC. Some people, the system can be hard to navigate, and having that kind of support to navigate, yeah, has benefited you. Another thing you bring up is change of staff. We see this across the board in community behavioral health. We don't have control over it. And right now, you know, the impact of COVID and the transition that a lot of people have had to make with Zoom and the different things that have changed across the board due to that, and the incredible impact it's had on families with school. You know, I don't need to go into those details for you, but that's when you need the support from the clinic. And the clinic, you know, maybe we can hear from a provider on this with staff turnover and difficulty of hiring. I was just talking to someone from a clinic yesterday, and they said that it's hard to find people, and staffing is also an issue. And you know, gosh, if we could just go into a system, have the same provider, have that trust, and build that rapport, that's what we like. But you've grown and you're here, so that, you know, there's a lot of
I
strength.
feel like that does have to go like solely with like, I mean, each person is different, but some people, like, I mean, thank God, like I've gone through the messed up things I've gone through, but that has definitely taught me to be able to keep going when odds are against me. But I know like so many people who have, you know, trust issues, and then someone just giving up on them, that triggers them to give up. And then not like, it's not that it's like forever, but just because they felt some type of way in the moment, like their whole life gets torn from them or ripped out of their hands. And I mean, like, and it sucks because I know it goes both ways. Like, yeah, you guys are struggling on that side, but like you guys come and take kids from their families and then tell that you got them, and then you don't even have enough staff to really even get to know the kid. My person that I have now, he's never even sat down and watched me and my son interact. And then to sit there and try and tell me, like, he can tell me how I am as a mom or who I am as a person or how me and my son are in the same room because he say, she say, or hearsay or whatever. But to not even go and see it in person and experience the bond and understand like that, it doesn't.
Yeah, and I think that speaks about the engagement that wasn't going on. You know, to be with the family and hear from the family and have that experience. I want to go into the chat box a little bit because things are stacking up here. Got somebody that's, and we do thank you, Zara.
This is Adria. Can I jump in and just say something really quick to something sticks out to me. You know, I've heard a few things, common comments about communication and feeling heard, and also the human connection, which is vitally important. But one of the things that, Nicole, you mentioned that was a success is that you felt like your person or one of the people that worked with you stayed by your side. I think for the purposes of CFTs, one of the things that we could improve on or a solution is to be connecting people before a CFT, connecting with them to prepare families for the CFT, to go over what their goals are for the CFT, what are the potential challenges that they might anticipate, and having those conversations to really involve them and demonstrate how much you care, which builds that human connection and trust, which was also brought up. So I think that that's one of the ways that we could be more solution-based, is that we are really engaging people before a CFT to prepare.
So ideally, and I really like your point about that, because any training that we gave, that was the expectation, is your CFT is a planning meeting. It's not an update meeting, right? You should be connecting with the families and all the stakeholders prior to that meeting. So when you get to the meeting, that's when you plan everything that you've talked about prior to that. That's why we complete the strength, needs, and culture before you even have a CFT, because how are you going to have a meeting about a family you know absolutely nothing about?
Right, absolutely.
So as far as training facilitators, that is the expectation, is to connect with each of the stakeholders and the family prior to that meeting.
Absolutely. And I think that, you know, initially in 2001, when the lawsuit came out for Jason K, and the CFT became a substantial part of the child and family process, that was meant to be the intention, and we have gone away from that to some degree. And I think Nicole touched on that when she talked about caseload size, and Kathy, you wanted to talk about, you know, hiring and the challenges with that. But it's not necessarily just finding quality individuals, but having manageable, not just workloads, but the system in which we work could be more manageable. So giving caseloads might be, in my idea, an old way of thinking, whereas we may need specialists to come in and talk and meet with people to work on specific challenges that a family is having, and really gearing our staff towards their strengths, so that they then can go out and help families in a meaningful way, rather than having a recovery coach with a family that has acute challenges and they have no experience. So really aligning strengths, not just with the individuals we work with, but the strengths that our staff have. So just a different way of thinking about staffing in general, I think, is a part of the solution, not just how many people we can hire.
Hi, I'm a family member as well, and I just kind of wanted to say, kind of give you an insight of, this has been the most horrible thing I have ever been through in my whole life. The way a CFT goes with my family is we get notified the night before the meeting. No one talks to us the whole month before. We get no emails, no texts, no phone calls. We get on the call, they shame you, they badmouth you. There's no one to step in to say this is inappropriate, we shouldn't be talking about this. Lawyers butt in and say things that they should be saying in court. And all we do is get an update on the child, and then they don't ask our opinion, they don't ask us anything. And then they say, well, this is what we're doing, and if you question it, it's kind of like, how dare you? How dare you question it, because they're in DCS's custody right now, so how dare you talk about them? And then when you question their behaviors and their diagnosis that they've had for 10 years, they tell you that, oh, well, we're wiping their slate clean and we're going to start over. And I really don't understand how we are supposed to be helping the situation when all they want to do is shame and scorn and make you feel horrible. And I have not had a good experience with this. I've been doing this for over 7 years and I've never had a good experience. I'm going into this and I know nothing. I don't know if I'm supposed to call someone, is someone calling me, what's the schedule, what do? I just sit and wait for help. And then to know that they've had 3 CFTs without inviting the parents, I mean, that's very hurtful. We're on our 6th case manager for a little over a year now. We're on our 6th one. And again, everything that these moms have said, I agree with every one of you. I agree with what you've been through. It's happened to me too. It's really frustrating because we're already dealing with this horrible situation and there's no one to come in to kind of guide you and help you and give you some light at the end of the tunnel, and you just go month to month. It's just really hard, and I'm just glad that there's somebody listening, and thank you for the time that you gave me.
Thank you for sharing that. And we can see and hear the same. There are people in the chat box that are saying they've had some similar type experience. I want to really encourage the conversation between the panelists and everybody that's an observer. Go ahead and read what's going on in the chat boxes. Esther.
I can go next. My name is Esther Cadman. I'm a family member here in Flagstaff, part of the FIC program, and my daughters are also getting counseling through CFSS. And I have two little ones, 7-year-old and an 8-year-old. And I'm really sorry for all of the experiences that parents have gone through. It sounds very heart-wrenching. But however, for me, I've been fortunate to have just a wonderful experience overall. I haven't had the experience of actually participating in a formal CFT meeting. I haven't had to get to that level yet. So, but as far as like my CFT team, I feel like every time I've had a need, especially with my daughters, and what my youngest is the one that really has behavioral outbursts. And when situations like that have occurred, immediately it was like, even that evening, we were all talking on the phone and brainstorming ways to make changes or approach things differently, or how to, change our tone. And they always listened to, like, they always heard my point of view, because, they always made me feel like, your daughter best. And so I felt my opinion or my perspective was always valued. I've been fortunate to have wonderful people on my team, and I know people are different, across the board, and it pains me to know that other parents didn't have like as wonderful of an experience as mine, but I've had a case manager that was always responsive. I had the same case manager as Nicole, and every time I needed anything, resources, she always connected me to people that I needed to talk to. The therapists that work with my daughters, we had to experience some of that staff change. However, it was just one staff change, and there was just a minor, lack of communication, and it did affect, how I felt. I kind of took it personal, and, people who come from trauma, a lot of us moms, I'm sure, have had, a traumatic past. And so some of those things tend to be taken personally, which in my case, I felt like, is it a race thing? I started questioning things that, I'm sure was not the case. And then we got transferred to another one, even after we were told this one was the one we were going to be working with. So there was some confusion, but once I voiced it, and it was through a FIC parent group meeting that I voiced that frustration, and they were on it right away. The next day I was getting phone calls and saying, I'm sorry you're experiencing this, and we're going to address this. And we, and they explained, why the changes were made. And fortunately, I got, in the end, the new therapist we got is such a blessing, and made me realize too, another important aspect that I didn't think was going to impact me, because I generally, try to get along and work well with everyone that I meet. And I was so appreciative of the therapists that I've had, but they've all been Anglo therapists, and they're all so wonderful, and just stepped in and was just very, very helpful to me as a parent. As far as like connecting me with like even respite programs, all of that has just been, it helped me as a single parent. But this new therapist is the only, or the first one, and the only one that I've seen in the offices that has a brown face. And like just this past 2 weeks, I've connected with her so well, and didn't know that that was going to really impact me, but it has. And so, you know, I really value and recommend that to encourage or to support more professionals who are ethnic, who are from different ethnic backgrounds, to be a part of the service teams, because, you know, there's a lot of, I'm sure, clients that are brown faced and, you know, that have different ethnicities, and it makes a difference on how comfortable it is to even accept these changes and stuff like that. And fortunately, you know, she's such a wonderful, like, this has been such a blessing, it turned out. but I'm so thankful for you know, these programs, and I'm thankful for the people that have just stepped in and really supported me and really supported my daughters. And it has really brought us together, and really myself, as well as the way I parent my daughters and my daughters themselves, we've all grown as far as our emotional regulation and all that stuff. So it's really helped us. And I'll continue to pray that other families will get that same blessing as well, because you know, I'm sure it's really difficult to feel like an outsider to teams and stuff. Generally, that's how I feel when I'm trying to be a part of stuff. But I have never felt that way with even the parent group meetings. There was a time where I needed babysitter because I had to go out of town for the weekend, and they all stepped in, the FIC team, CFSS, and they all, like, I had a whole day of different providers coming in to help take care of my girls, and they just kind of like dropped everything to help me, and it was so neat. And yeah, so I'm just thankful, and I just pray for those kinds of experience for everybody else as well. And thank you.
And we thank you. Again, I want to encourage the panel to be interacting with each other here on this.
Hi, this is Kim. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to just comment that I appreciate Esther, your story, and I think there's a lot of very positive experiences out there, and I think that there's obviously the latter as well. And I know that in our trainings that we have done in Northern Arizona, a lot of the points that have been made today are topics that we definitely train on, that we encourage, that engagement and trust, and that building that relationship, and that's a very important piece that we train on, that has been in the trainings for several years. And I feel like that has to carry on once they start working with families, and the support needs to come also from the agency and the team that they are working with. And if the experiences are not that, I just feel, and I know they're not always that we need to be able to help families be comfortable enough to reach out to another level or someone else within the agency where they can share their concerns and get the support that they need. And so bridging that gap, I think, is what I hear really needs to happen through our systems. I feel like that is a big piece, because all of the comments that have been made, and I know we don't have the time to hear what people have done to follow up, to try to get that support, to try to see who else is out there to support them. Having Family Involvement Center is, I mean, I don't want to be biased, but they are so fabulous and so supportive always. And if you can get a hold of them, then you're probably going to be in a good spot in help engaging what's going on with the other systems that you're working with. But if you don't have that, or you don't have that resource, how do we get that? How do we bridge that gap? And I think that's a real big piece that we need to work on, that we need to look at as a whole.
Yeah, this is Adria. Just to kind of piggyback on that, Kim, you know, I think of a couple of different things, instances in where clinical teams are, on one side, that clinical teams are really working cohesively, because case management is the core and the contact of to the family directly, and it's the person that the family goes to, but there's a larger team really working together. And so how are we really involving those other team members in the CFT process, so that the family does feel supported, not just by the case manager, but everybody involved? And secondarily, you know, case management are also sort of resource brokers in a way, like you were discussing. And so how can we do a better job of engaging people in their own communities so that families are not just relying on formal services? And I think that part of the CFT process is, somebody said earlier, I can't remember exactly how she said it earlier, but she alluded to the engagement of community resources, and how can we continue that, so that people aren't just relying on a formal resource, you know, to get their needs met. Because it is true, there is a lack of services, a lack of placements for children, a lack of understanding, as we heard, understanding of people's needs and families' needs. So how can we better connect our community to have a better ecosystem?
This is April and Paula said I'm added to the panel. So I wanted to say, one of the things that I've experienced, and I am definitely a professional, but I also am a mom. I have 4 kids in the system that are adopted now, but were foster kids. And one of the things that I thought was a really great ideal process is the TDM process that's done by DCS when families go and have those meetings. And what I really like about that process is that there's a facilitator that goes into the meeting and really like says, you know, don't talk over each other. They really want to make sure that nobody is shaming and blaming. All of those things are said right up front, and the facilitator will step in if there's any shaming or blaming in those meetings. And it really helps, I think, to have everybody on the team have a voice.
Yeah, you make a really good point about that. And I think that's where, you know, case managers struggle, is that, you know, they wear many, many hats. And so becoming a facilitator and a resource person and connecting all the team and the human connection. And so there's a lot that relies on them. And so what could we be doing like or similar to the DCS process? Because you're right, being in TDMs is a very different experience. And it is focused on planning, as somebody had mentioned earlier, which is the point of the CFT process. So it's planning focused, and everybody gets a voice intentionally. So that is a really good point.
And I think this, for me, this is Layla with United. I think this is a point, I think, where I get frustrated, is because when I was trained in CFTs many years ago, that was the expectation. I mean, everything that you said, from ground rules to engaging prior to the meeting, to coordinating with the CASA, coordinating with probation, all of these things, going into the home, you know, asking questions, all of these things should be standard practice, right? And within our trainings, whether it's been 2 weeks or 1 week, and now it's been tapered down to 2 days, all of those things are in there. But one of the things that I spoke with Kathy about, and somebody mentioned it in the chat, is how do we get the case managers and stakeholders to adhere to this process, right? Because we can train all day, every day, give competency checks and things like that. But if there is no oversight into making sure that they're continuing to do this, because quite frankly, we all get burnt out, right? Parents get burnt out, therapists get burnt out, case managers, peer support, everybody gets burnt out at some point. And that's when, you know, people start to slack off a little bit. And if there's not a supportive manager, supportive supervisor, or some provider agency or health plan giving some of that oversight, things start to slip through the cracks, right? So how do we hold each other accountable? How does the team hold each other accountable? Because if your case manager is not being the facilitator, because that's their role, the therapist or the JPO should be aware enough of the CFT process to say, hey, this is what you're supposed to be doing, or step in, because it's a team, right? And
Exactly.
they should feel comfortable enough to say, hey, you know what? You said that you would do this. Where are we at with that? Then the parent's not going to feel like everything is on them if the whole team is holding each other accountable. So how do we get to that point where everybody is holding each other accountable for the child and their family?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is Adria. That's exactly kind of what I was alluding to earlier, is that, you know, what are we doing to engage the entire clinical team? You know, because perhaps a therapist could be reaching out to the family to do some prep before, if they're highly involved with the family. So there's multiple dynamics that I think that we're not really tapping into in order to have a cohesive understanding and have a real planning meeting.
Right. And one of the things that I've noticed over the last couple of years is somebody mentioned CFT coach. I think the coaching has become more prevalent in our provider world than it has prior to. I think people are realizing that the training only takes you so far, but there needs to be coaching and mentoring, right? And I think that we've seen that a little bit more than it was before, but I'd like to see it go a little bit further and be pushed.
Yeah, what a great point. Absolutely.
The system change, though, I think that happened on a national level with healthcare reform and so forth, that led to the breakups of the REBAs and the more competition, which it had its positives too. One of the negatives is less coaching from that level. There were coaches by NARBA back in the days, and everybody that had a coach would gather up in Flagstaff for, and it wasn't just training, it's little refresher sharing sessions where things could go. And we knew the coaches, multiple coaches, they were involved in the trainings. And so it wasn't just a one-shot training. And like you said, somebody said, moving from weeks to days to, you know, I think pursuing efficiency, but the culture's definitely changed as a result of that. I know you represent those forces. There's nothing you personally can do about this. Isn't an attack on people. It's just an observation that we want all this to happen, but partly there has to be kind of money and investment in it, access to carve out that space and not rush it and not just bottle it up in a small area, but to nurture it. Because I went through that at the health. And it was partly not just that change of system, but partly just the economy getting, you know, tighter and layoffs, and it just became more difficult to nurture it in kind of a humanistic way, to nurture all the staff to believe in the philosophy. And the philosophy isn't that a CFT is automatically going to be magical, but it is really going to be, we have a place we can get to. And if everybody has their mindset that we'll get to, we can turn a horrible CFT into a well-oiled machine over 3 or 4 months. But if we quit in the middle of that, or if people are hurt in the middle of that early stage of development of a group going through its norming, forming, storming, and then finally get into a functional CFT, you have to write it and get there. It's not going to be there from day one just because you're an awesome facilitator. And I think that I also second that even back in those days, I felt like there was not enough training on general meeting facilitation skills. So when I would train my staff at West Yavapai, I went through it was really in the business world. How do you run a meeting? How do you stop somebody who's taking all the time in the meeting, kind of dominating? How do you, you know, redirect in a way that doesn't leave people feeling shamed? All those sophisticated skills But if you have a team that does it with not much turnover, that practices it year after year, they get good at it, and that pays off for a clinic that makes it really work. Whereas if somebody gets a 1 day or 2 day training and then they're launched out there on their own, and there really wasn't mention of those skills are they can be developed. I mean, they're also partly natural, but they make or break a lot of CFTs. I would get complaints when there would be a beginner CFT coach, and there would be on both sides that they felt shamed, or they felt like the CFT facilitator let it turn into total chaos, and it was the same meeting. So it's super hard, and case managers at the clinics tend to the brunt of all blame. Everything comes back to them. It's a super hard job, and so I just want to put a there that it can't just be that they are responsible for when these go wrong. It is the whole team and the whole system, and how we set it up to succeed or fail, and how do we coach and all of that. But ultimately, my point that I'm rambling too long on is that that's an investment that was decided to be made because of the lawsuit. Yep. We recognize that is faded away, just like everything fades away, and we need to reinvest.
Yes. And this is Adria again, Kent, you bring up such a good point. And I keep thinking about, there's actually a requirement for 3 CFTs to be supervised. So supervisors should essentially be attending at least 3 CFTs for a recovery coach to supervise them in the process and do this this coaching that Layla talked about earlier, coaching. And I think that we've gotten away from that. I think that supervisors aren't actually adhering to those, that agencies are not overseeing that very specific and very important expectation that there is supervision for those CFTs, and that a supervisor is signing off stating that this person is ready and qualified to conduct CFT meetings.
I just want to clarify, because you said that there's a requirement. As far as I know, there's not an access requirement saying that you have to observe 3 CFTs prior to putting that out there. That's more of an agency specific requirement if the agency wants it that way. The only thing that access is requiring, or the health plans that are requiring, is the CFT supervision tool that came out a couple of years ago, which is after being trained as a CFT facilitator, you must be observed within your first 90 days, within 6 months, and then a year after that.
That's exactly what I'm referring to. Yes,
okay.
That's exactly what I'm referring to. Mm-hmm.
So there's not a minimum of 3 before they facilitate. Unfortunately, that should be the expectation.
It's during the process.
Right.
Yeah.
So I just because I worked for a provider agencies prior to, that was my expectation being a supervisor of high needs case managers, is they had to observe 3, we had to observe 3 on them, and if they all went well, then they were able to facilitate by themselves. Not all agencies have the luxury of doing that, like with the amount of turnover. Unfortunately, people are just hiring warm bodies. They're not spending the time that, I would like, that parents would like, educating their facilitators. They're saying, I have 60 kids that need case managers. Let's get a body in here, do the best we can, assign these cases, and then, move on, unfortunately.
I think Nicole has her hands up.
Yeah, I saw. Oh, yeah, I'm not muted. Okay. But so I was just, so is the meetings you guys are talking about, is that different from the ones that DCS held? Because like in the beginning of my when I first started this, like we were supposed to have the monitored meetings or schedule them, and when it hit like when my my court date came up to see about reunification, they had said that I missed every single meeting and that I didn't attend or whoop-de-whoop, but I never received like an email. I never received like a phone call. My mom didn't even receive a phone call. She didn't even know like what meetings they were talking about. And like, are those the same ones you guys are talking about, or just like the CFTs in general?
We're referring to the requirements for or a supervision tool created for behavioral health agencies. The meetings that are run by DCS are not the same and don't necessarily follow the same guidelines.
Okay. I was about to say, I was like,
So yeah, so it depends on where the meeting is held and who's actually responsible for facilitating the meeting, and that's how you'll know the differences. Is it a DCS meeting, or is this run by your case manager through the behavioral health agency?
Okay.
Back when the days we were talking about when that tool was envisioned and there was a lot of training and there were behavior, CFT coaches, supervisors also played a huge role in that. But even, when you talk about workforce development, we had a CFT, or we had supervisors at the clinic I came from for maybe 8 to 10 people, that then when financial interests, drove the ship, that in order to stay afloat, we had supervisors with way more people. And so the thing that you, as a supervisor, you're swamped too with lots of responsibilities, and to try to get to, you hire 4 new staff and you're trying to get 3 CFTs, it just watered down for sure. And I think that has shown, and we were
logistical.
Lucky to have a lot of old, long-term employees that got the original training, and then it was even more of a hurt when if they would leave, because the new folks coming in, you knew they weren't going to get the amount of support and training that the folks got just 5 to 10 years ago.
Yeah. How can we also, encourage peer support among case managers? I felt that when I was running case management and recovery teams, the most successful individuals had another buddy on the team, somebody that they could, work with and work off of. And I think there's some value in that, in creating a team feel and environment where people can support each other, because we do have to, make up for some of those logistical issues.
I totally agree. I think also back in those early days of the CFT getting developed, there was a big reach out to the, probation, to DCS, yes. And their case managers would come to our CFT trainings, or the ones that we were attending at the REBA.
Mm-hmm.
Otto had a lot more communication with those other systems and buy-in from those other systems. So when because if you have a CFT and it's a tough one to run, and you start to stumble, if you have folks from those other systems that know the philosophy well and that have been to some trainings, they step in, and it's not like you have one facilitator, you have 4 or 5 co-facilitators helping it go in a good direction. And that good direction is about not shaming the parents and hearing their voice and not an agenda. That's a huge one.
Mm-hmm.
You can't help it to have an agenda as a worker, but you can consciously kind of put it on the back shelf and give us some space to it maybe not going your way, going some new creative good way. You don't do that, then it's a fight instead between agendas.
And Kent, you bring up a very good point between the collaboration between stakeholders. And that's one of the things the CFT work group is discussing, is how can we educate the stakeholders in the CFT process? Because you can have a new probation officer come to a CFT and they have no clue what a CFT is all about. You have a CASA come in and they don't know what a CFT is about. So if they don't understand what the CFT process is, it is a whole bunch of different agendas all coming to one meeting. And the part of the CFT training is about stakeholder collaboration, right? So we are trying to work as a project of creating something for stakeholders, just for them. So that is a to be determined thing.
That is good to hear. I think
that is really good to hear.
We are in a spot where there is a little open opportunity right now. I'm feeling it. I've talked to other people around, in the business, that you can't really be mentioning adding, meetings and work groups when everybody's totally stressed out. But COVID, coming into a new world with some more dollars coming our way, I feel like this is a great time to invest and to do the things that you're doing. So I'm glad to hear that one's going on.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we have a couple of members actually on that CFT work group on the meeting today, and they're advocating and just as passionate for all of these things as everybody that I've heard today, and those who I haven't heard that are just here and feel like it's important to be here.
So we've got about 10 minutes left, and one of the things we're hearing is in the good old days, the CFTs were running a lot smoother, it would seem. So I'm wondering if the panel would like to respond to maybe what has changed over time, and maybe Vicki or Amelia could respond to that because we haven't heard from you yet. Give you an opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you everybody for the feedback that's been received. I think it's I'm saddened to hear about the experiences that folks have had in working with providers in our community. Definitely, I think as a system, right, our commitment is try to ensure a better kind of service delivery, and so your feedback will be taken back and kind of further discussed within our teams. In terms of, and I totally blanked for a split second. Repeat your question for me. I wanted to make sure that I kind of went there. My apologies.
What's changed over time?
Well, I think we've had a couple of different things. I think, Kent and some of the other folks kind of alluded to that, right? Our system is evolving and changing. And so I definitely know with the, the shift in the system in terms of, right, the number of folks that are sitting at the table has definitely increased, right, over the last couple of years. And so I think that really has shifted the system in many different ways. I mean, we talk about like the CFT training, right? Before it was managed by 3 entities. Now that looks different and feels different. So I think, that's one factor. I think in addition to that, right, it didn't help that we're, kind of went into a pandemic and everything went virtual. And so then, right, and so then we needed to shift in regards to what that looks like and what does engagement look like now when I'm having a maybe as an entry level case manager, right? A lot of families specifically are working with high needs case managers in most cases, and the feedback that we've received in my own personal experience is that the case managers or the high needs case managers are folks that are just barely out of college, right? Or may have some behavioral health experience, or maybe not at all. And so I think there's a mix of things. So just looking at the workforce, there's already some presented challenges in regards to the skills that they bring and their experience. And so the pandemic only, right, added more to that, right? So now on top of learning how to maneuver how this system works, which can be also very bureaucratic in nature, right? I have to fill out this form, I have to do this. So sometimes it feels more as, I think I sat in on a CFT and then had a conversation with a staff person at the time when I was working with a provider group. And she said to me, I feel like when we meet with families that it's about meeting my needs as a case manager or as a clinician, right? Because I have all of these things that I must do in order to stay compliant and really can't be like present and at the moment. So I think the intention around CFT practice is great, right? But I think that the system, as we look to ensure compliance and, also just standardization, right? So that we can really look at things apples to apples, I think then convolutes all of that and makes things a little bit more challenging than it needs to be. So that's kind of my 2 cents in terms of what has happened.
Okay, so Kim said that that what we really need is maybe an advocate or to take things to another level. And one of my concerns is that FIC is in Northern Arizona and is there to help take things to another level and also be an advocate. But what I'm understanding from community members is that there's problems with the health homes and referring to FIC. So is this an issue? And it seems a shame because I'm hearing so much positive response to the work FIC has done. So how can we change that?
I think from my perspective, and you know, I think really is the from what the feedback that I've gathered in my own experience, I think it really is around the payment model that is contracted with providers. So by the different health plans. So the feedback that I've received, again, all secondhand or firsthand from the providers specifically, is around that the payment model that they are under with other plans may not support, as I understand it, may not support reaching out to entities or other organizations, most in these cases, specialty providers outside of their organization, because then the payment model, again, isn't supportive of that. And I don't know the intricacies of what that entails. That's just the feedback that we've received. For Care First, we've been we've made it very clear to our providers that that a member can go directly into a specialty provider and seek services. The specialty provider can render those services, but we need to ensure that they connect with a health home within a certain time frame, right, to allow that accessibility of services. And so there's an ebb and flow, and so it works for us. I'm not sure that I hear some of the challenges from some of the providers on the other contracts.
Thank you, Vicki. I really appreciate your integrity. And Amelia, you've been hiding. Where is Amelia, and what would you like to share anything? There you are. I love you with all your little hearts, and you've been like a little mouse.
This is true. I am hiding. So I do have a couple of thoughts. Oh goodness, I was trying to jot down some notes. Regarding sort of the last question that was previously posed about, like, what has changed from sort of the historical piece. I'm certainly not the best person to provide that lens. I've only been in Arizona, I suppose, almost 7 years. So I don't have the bigger picture. However, what I do bring to the table is my experience previously working in child welfare and behavioral health back in Illinois, and how that connects and is different from here. And so one of the things that I do see in my role is sort of this divide between the stakeholders at the table at the CFT process, and also sort of this everyone pointing fingers at the other person of, well, that's behavioral health, that's not DCS, or that's not probation, that's somebody else. And so there definitely is a need for some continued work on the collaboration in that aspect, but also just sort of the need for a broader understanding of what everybody's role is and how they can all collaborate together. I know that, so within my unit here at DCS, we do some education to the field for new specialists, DCS specialists, regarding sort of this high level overview of the CFT process. But our unit is not yet fully trained in the CFT practice that several folks have been referring to. Layla, you had, this 2-day training. It's in the works, I will say, very soon. We are hoping to get it by the end of the month. But with that, I think that, we will be able to hopefully provide this bigger picture to the DCS specialists that can also help empower them, because sometimes we'll be at CFTs and the high needs case manager or targeted case manager will be wonderful at facilitating the process, but not necessarily know the resources. And so they'll look at the team and say, hey, like, here are all these big behaviors that your kiddo is having, but what do you want? DCS or, foster parent or parent? Like, what do you think your kid needs? And everyone sort of just looks at each other because they don't know what the resources are either. And they sort of look to the CFT facilitator to be the expert in that. And so I think, there's a lack of understanding of what the resources are and how they may differ from different areas of the state. and a need for sort of empowering folks, right? I know that I've participated in CFTs and afterwards have been outreached to say, hey, Amelia, we need some additional support. And I have no problem providing folks with email addresses and contact numbers for reporting these issues, or, you know, and their perceived issues up to Access if it needs to go there. If Access doesn't hear about it, they don't know that there's a problem, they won't know to fix it, right? And so I think it's really important to empower folks to, and give them the tools to be able to work through those steps to get things.
Thank you so much. And as we are, you know, approaching time here, I just want to comment that some of the feedback from the community is, and it has to do with engagement. They want to meet in person. They're ready to meet in person now. And this is kind of across the board where that can happen and how that can happen. Some of the community feel a bit overwhelmed by the system and the insensitivity. So I think that I just thank everybody for being here and appreciate the conversation, the discussion that went on. And I want to encourage you to take a look at the chat. I'm not going to close it down immediately. Capture what's in the chat. There's been a lot going on there. And, you know, we'd like to, I think we could go on another hour. You know, just kind of got warmed up. And we would certainly be glad to hold another dialogue on this topic to continue if there is demand for that. We will, you know, whatever your needs are. But most important, people need to be heard. They need to be respected, understood. So really appreciate that.
So we've got to exit. We are going to follow up. I'm hoping FIC will work with us and having family members, we can all meet and discuss this. I think Laurie wants to have another dialogue. And so we will be getting back to you. And thank you very much. Laurie did a fantastic job. So let's give her applause. Yay, Laurie.
Woo.
And again, I just want to thank everybody, and for the family members, the parents, our hearts go out to you. And you can reach out to me directly. You can reach out through the mental health resources page that Amelia Cearlock has. There are a lot of resources to tap into. And if you want to come forward on some level of advocacy, the Northern Arizona Peer and Family Coalition welcomes you. And I can answer questions about that too. Just go ahead and contact me. So again, thank you everybody and all of our panelists. I know that you're busy people. We all have things going on, and everybody took time to be here for this and to be respectful and equals at the table. So thank you. Thank you so much.